Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the president of the University Paris Dauphine, let me welcome you to this university. And I'm very happy that we resume this cooperation with the OECD, especially with Directory. Public Governance Director, sorry. And with the network of economic regulators, we have been holding a conference in this room for the last 10 years. And I'm very happy that you were all able to join this morning for this conference on data digitalization and sector resilience, which is part of a cycle of conference of webinars on how, in fact, regulators could leverage the power of data to better regulate. And this morning is this conference, this workshop is about how can regulators use data and digital tools to strengthen sector resilience. So data and digital tools are transforming how regulators monitor sectors, anticipate risk, and strengthen resilience. Access to real-time information, advanced analytics, and digital monitoring systems should enable regulators to proactively detect emerging vulnerability, test system robustness, and support more informed decision-making. To make use of this potential, regulators face challenge in integrating data into a regulatory process and translating insights into effective action. Those challenges are both legal, technical, and there is a huge challenge also of trust. When you do this type of things, you should be truthful and trust, and you should be entrusted by all the stakeholders. This event will explore how regulators across sectors are using data and digital tools to enhance sector resilience. It will discuss practical experience with early warning systems, stress testing, and scenario analysis, and institutional approach to support preparedness and response. This seminar is jointly organized, as I just mentioned, by the OECD Network of Economic Regulators and the University Paris Dauphine, and in the University Paris Dauphine, the Governance and Regulation Chaire, which is hosting the Club des Régulateurs, the French Club des Régulateurs. And so I will immediately give the floor to Giuseppa Ottimofiore for some opening remarks. So Giuseppa is the head of the Effective Regulatory Delivery Program at the OECD. Giuseppa, the floor is yours.
So first of all, thanks a lot also for hosting in this very nice room this seminar, and which has the benefit of bringing together regulators, but also academics and practitioners. Earlier this year, as said, we already hold a webinar on this topic, which was titled Designing Data Sharing Arrangements, Institutional Choices for Regulators. Today is the second event of this series, which will go on until spring of next year, yes, at least. So why this topic matters? So across sectors, in the network of economic regulators, we typically have energy, transport, telecoms, and water, but of course there are other sectors here, for example, around the table. We see that systems are becoming, within and vis-à-vis each other, more complex and interconnected. These systems are also exposed to risks that already existed, but already new, and a growing range of these risks, including, for example, cyber incidents, climate-related disruptions, supply chain shocks, right? So regulators are increasingly expected not only to respond quickly to these risks, but also to anticipate them as early as possible. So what is the role of data and digitalization that we are discussing today? So data and information is crucial to understand how sectors are performing, how they can make better intervention choices, whether policy objectives are being met or not, right? What is changing now also growingly is, for example, the volume of data available, the quality, the speed at which signals can be detected, right? So many regulators, this is what we see when talking to the members of our community, are moving from traditional periodic reporting towards continuous reporting of performance. What are the opportunities? Early warning mechanisms, for example, allowing regulators to detect operational risks and emerging vulnerabilities earlier. Also, more evidence-based decision-making, how to anticipate what is coming on, how to perform better, how to support better the sector. Challenges remain, including the growing availability of data, data coming from multiple sources, systems that are not always connected, that don't always have the same format, analytical capacities, institutional processes required to transform these volumes in meaningful insights. And without these elements, data will not necessarily translate into better regulatory decisions. So the purpose of today's webinar, I don't want to take too much time, is to exchange not only theoretical, but especially practical experience across sectors, jurisdictions, actors. In particular, using data as early warning systems, stress testing scenario analysis, strengthening institutional preparedness. So here we are, looking forward to hearing the discussion and thanking in advance all participants. Thanks a lot.
Let's immediately switch to the first session entitled Using Data as an Early Warning System. So increasingly, regulators rely on real-time and near real-time data to identify emerging risks and anticipate disruptions. This session will explore how data systems, monitoring tools, and trends analysis can function as early warning systems. And two speakers will present practical examples of how regulators use data and tools to detect vulnerability and raise attention to potential sector risk. And the first speakers will be Manuel Fernando Muñoz Quiroz. He's a general manager, sorry for the pronunciation. He's a general manager of Sunass, Peru's water regulator, with a career spanning senior leadership roles at the Ministry of Transport and Communication and OSIPTEL. He's a specialist in public service regulation and international policy. And Manuel, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Bonjour, madame and monsieur. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this important seminar. This morning, I want to share a very important answer for this question. How can regulators use data and digital tools to strengthen sector resilience? This is a question that Sunass has been answered from experience. I want to share that experience from the perspective of a water and sanitation regulator. In a country where access gap persists, cross-sectoral coordination remains fragmented, and institutional and budgetary resources are limited. For us, the data and digital tools are not a complement to regulation. They are essential capacities to anticipate risk, identifying vulnerabilities, focusing interventions, and strengthening sector resilience. The next, please. Oh, sorry. Our innovation strategy is organized around two complementary instruments, of dimensions. Inward innovation aimed at strengthening how Sunass itself operates, and outward innovation aimed at improving what regulation delivers to a sector. This logic is expressed in two concrete instruments: SION, in the left side, as a space for internal transformation, and Kamiyaku is a platform for the analysis and monitoring of drinking water information at the national level. Both initiatives were developed with our own professionals inside the institution. What was the situation before the existence of Kamiyaku, and what is the situation now? To have an idea, the territory of Peru is about 1.28 million square kilometers. You could put inside Peru the territory of France, Germany, Spain, and the United Kingdom. It's a very big territory with different kind of geography. We have Amazonas, Andes, and coast. And in different places, the demands is very important to know what happened with the service in each part of the country. Before Kamiyaku, information in Sunass was distributed across multiple areas, organized in fragmented databases, but the information was not complete. Almost the same information, but in different units. Faced with the reality, the question was not just how to build a better database, it was how to create an institutional capacity oriented toward generating timely, useful information for the regulatory action. That was the reason to create Kamiyaku. Kami means Center for Analysis and Monitoring Information, and Yaku is native language, means water in Quechua. Kamiyaku operates from Lima and from 4 macro-regional offices. In the north, in Piura; in the east, San Martín; Junín in the center; and Arequipa in the south. It is a distributed capacity designed to operate with greater proximity to the territory. Its outputs run on 3 rings: an immediate level linked to real-time monitoring, early warnings, maps, and dashboards; a continuous level oriented toward the development of applications and reports; and a peer level associated with studies, special projects, and agreements with other actors in the sector. Oh, yes. Only with you, I think. Thank you. This is one of the very important questions for the users in my country: whether there will be water in their homes today. Because in many parts of the country, the continuity of the service is really a big problem. Lack of service continuity is a public health risk, particularly for the most vulnerable population, who typically resort to storing water when the service is interrupted. By 2025, average continuity in Peru had reached about 18 hours per day across 4.5 million connections. However, approximately 400,000 connections were still receiving water less than 6 hours per day. In response, Sunass developed an in-house system based on data lowers. Data lower is a pressure and continuity sensor installed at 360 national points across the country. It is a remote automated system capable of generating early warnings and strengthening the regulators and monitoring capacity. The next, please. Another system is called MOREA. It's a system for the remote monitoring of chlorination in small cities. Another question is if the water in my community is safe or not safe. In many of these localities, especially in small cities, the service providers do not chlorinate or chlorinate inadequately. Sunass responds with MOREA, 26 monitoring stations installed in reservoirs that capture residual chlorine levels in real time. This information is stored remotely and sent to the service providers. The effect is very important. When the provider knows they are being observed in real time, compliance improves. This demonstrates that data does not only serve to measures, it also modifies behavior and strengthens the regulatory response. Next, please. Another question for the users is, the moment when the system fails and users are left without information about when their water will return, the problem is solved or not solved. Sunass built a monitoring system that identifies in real time the cause, location, duration, and affected population in each interruption. The system is complemented by ya conectados, a bidirectional contact mechanism through which Sunass communicates directly with users to know if the service is restored or not. Next, please. Another very important tool is Map. It's access gap and investment visualization in a map along the country. We also have Map, which addresses a question that is especially relevant for the unconnected population. When the water and sanitation project planned for their area will be completed. It is an interactive map that integrates service quality, the access gap, and the status of water and sanitation investment projects. It allows to regulators, policymakers, citizens to know about the project in the future and, of course, how is the situation of the service today. Next, please. This is an example of how the information and the relationships between regulator and the service providers operate. The case of the EPS Rioja is a service provider in the jungle area in Peru. Before the Camillacu, breaking pressure and service continuity at EPS Rioja was entirely manual process. Now the situation is changed. Now all the information is automatic and they send the information to Camillacu, we process that information and we feedback to the company and say, for example, in which part of the area or in which sector they have problems with the provision of water or sanitation service. Next, please. We have Sion, is a center for operational innovation. As I told you some minutes before, on the internal side, Sion works in 3 stages: process, diagnosis and mapping, redesign and automation, and implementation with sustainability. It's for internal management. The objective is to reduce time, lower costs, and free up institutional capacity for analysis and decision-making. One of the most important products of Sion is the trust system. The trust is a tribunal to assist or to resolve user complaints. Trust receives approximately 60,000 case files per year. This was a very important information to process. The redesign system extracts information from complex case files, applies pre-structured legal criteria, and generates a draft resolution in approximately 5 minutes. Before the system, all this analysis took about 35 days. The situation changed dramatically. With this draft resolution, the lawyer review, validates, and decide what is the final decision. Next, please. For the regulator, it's important not only process the information, process the data. For us, it's very important to introduce or to promote that young people, like students of the universities, what is the importance of the sanitary or the sanitation service in the life of the population. That is the reason that in 2025, Sunass organized the first data science competition for young students of the universities. We received more than 270 applications, and the winning projects were implemented in service providers, in 4 service providers. This year, the initiative has expanded to national scale. The datathon is not just a competition. It is a tool for attracting talent, building knowledge networks, and connecting the water sector to the academic and technology communities. Next, please. Finally, Kamiyaku also produced available research. In the second half of 2025, it published studies on multidimensional poverty and access to drinking water, on the relationship between water consumption and economic activity, and on non-revenue water as a management challenge for providers. These are open, accessible publications, and for us it's important to produce information because it's important for the academy, the different stakeholders to know what is the situation of the service in different parts of the country, but not only with our information or data processed information, with documents of researchers. The next, please. So, how can regulators use data and digital tools to strengthen sector resilience? I told you different kinds of answers to solve this question. The first is that resilience requires visibility, identifying gaps, risks, and disruption in time to be able to act. The second is that data only acquires public value when institutional capacities exist to turn it into concrete regulatory decisions and actions. The third is that the efficiency of the regulator itself is also part of the sector resilience because a more agile and focused institution is better prepared to respond to the challenge that affects service quality and continuity. And perhaps that is the main lesson of our experience. Regulatory innovation does not arise solely from the availability of resources. It arises, above all, from the institutional capacity to prioritize, adapt, and build solutions with a strategic purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very stimulating case study, if I might use this academic expression, since it highlights how, in fact, regulators, by improving the transparency of the sector, might impact on the behavior of players that basically are more accountable in front of different stakeholders, of course the regulator, but also the population, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very, very stimulating, very interesting. So let me switch immediately to the second speaker, so Tomás de Oliveira Bredariol, who oversees the International Methane Emission Observatory's analytical work and its OGMP 2.0 data analysis team. Before joining INEP, he led the analysis on methane abatement and the development of the global methane tracker at the International Energy Agency, and he started his career at the Brazilian Institute of Environment and Offshore Oil Gas, overseeing follow-up activities and leading the technical working group on risk management and emergency response. So, Tomás, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind words and for the invitation to be here today. And let me also just say, I'm sorry that Megan Demeter, who is the program manager for the methane alert system, can't be here today. She's actually at the two regulatory network meeting, which is jointly organized by the International Energy Agency and the Climate and Clean Air Coalition in coordination with the OECD Energy Regulators Network. And actually, there are a few colleagues from myself there from Brazil. And it's very interesting to see this is the first meeting that they have to kind of go into the world of developing regulations on methane emissions. And one of the key topics is the methane alert and response system, which I'm going to be speaking about a bit more today. Let me see if it works with me. Let me give it a try. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, if I may rely on you to... Oh, should I just... Oh. The control is no longer in my hands, okay? Not my... But I can perhaps just slowly get started and talk a little bit about the International Methane Emissions Observatory. This organization is housed within the United Nations Environment Programme. It was created in 2021, supported by the European Commission and a few other partners. And its mission is to bring actionable data on methane to the people that can act on it. And the reason why we do this is it became clear that methane emissions are this major problem, right? They respond for about 30% of warming to date. It's probably the fastest lever we can use to reduce temperatures within our lifetimes. It's largely cost-effective, especially in the oil and gas sector, but people don't know how to act on it because they don't have information, because methane is not something you can see, it's not something that you can smell. So a lot of this is just bringing the information on what are the key sources of methane emissions to the people that can act on it, be it regulators or oil and gas operators or investors and other stakeholders. So this is the mission of the International Methane Emissions Observatory, and one of its key initiatives is the methane alert and response system. So what does this system do? It starts with the detection of methane emissions and the attribution of these emissions to specific facilities. So we draw on data from 35 methane satellites and sensors to identify where are these large methane emissions occurring. So just for a bit of context, we're talking about more than 100 kilograms of methane emissions per hour. This is the lowest detection threshold from satellites. A lot of methane emissions are below these thresholds, but still we can see thousands and thousands of these plumes, which are every and each one of them a huge opportunity to reduce this climate damaging pollution. It's also an opportunity to make operations safer and more efficient, because methane emissions, or methane, is the largest component of natural gas. About 90% of natural gas is methane. So the first step is looking at the satellite data and filtering and understanding where are these emissions, crossing it with wind data to pinpoint which facilities are responsible. The second point is alerting the people that can do something about it. So this can be notifications to governments, it can be notifications to UNEP in-country representatives that can then go and talk to the responsible actors. It can be notifications to oil and gas companies that are within the Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0, which is a reporting initiative led by UNEP for methane emissions in the oil and gas sector. The third element is working on response. So following up with these actors to see what was done with the information provided. Do they need support to understand if emissions ceased, if mitigation activities worked? Do they need technical capacity? Do they need support from another institution to help them address the issue? And the final and last is looking at how the system evolves and how the plumes and the emissions evolve over time to make sure that these super-emitting events have really ceased. So this is a brief overview of the constellation of instruments that we are working with right now. This includes both satellites that are operating, satellites that have operated in the past that might have detected emissions and can thus help us understand for how long certain sources have been active, and also work to prepare for the integration of satellites that will be coming online soon. And there are two broad types of satellites that we're working with. One is what we call the point source imagers. So these are satellites that are targeted at specific locations. We need to go and tell, please go and look at this and this and this sites, and then we can work with that information. The second set of satellites are what we call area flux mappers. So essentially these satellites are covering on a periodic basis all of a certain region. So if we talk about, for example, Sentinel-5P, which is one of the key ones that we're working with from the European Space Agency, it looks at every region around the world roughly every couple of days to pull information on emissions, including on methane emissions. And then what does this look like in practice? On the top there, what you see is a sample of emissions detections across the world, divided into the three key sectors that we find these super emitters: oil and gas, coal, and landfills. And there below, what you see is a specific plume and a close-up image of where this is coming from. And in this case, it's a malfunctioning flare at an oil and gas facility. So this is what our analysts will do for every image. The first step is working with machine learning and artificial intelligence to screen the data and see where emissions occur. The second is crossing that with wind data and other information. And then the last step, two analysts will check the information to make sure that everything lines up and that we indeed have detected a super emitter. And what makes Mars unique is that we're integrating essentially all the data that is available publicly, and also some information that is provided to us through partners and that's not publicly available. And then we're delivering these notifications to a network of stakeholders that we work with. We have regional case managers that help us identify who are the right people to act in different places of the world, and then providing this data free of charge to all the stakeholders and helping them work through them to address methane emissions. One publication that is coming up in early May is a joint work with the International Energy Agency that we did for the Ministry of Oil in Iraq, helping them to develop a framework for rapid response to Mars alerts. And what we've seen is that these notifications, they have been leading to solutions. In over 10 countries now, we're actually increasing that number. We'll be publishing some new data in early May. We have seen a lot of cases where operators or regulators have been notified, they have followed up, and they have, for example, lit a flare that wasn't lit, or they have closed the well that was leaking, or they have repaired the compressor station that was emitting, and we quickly see that emissions ceased in those places. Now, we're still a long way from where we need to be. When the methane alert and response system started in 2024, it was still in a prototype version to a certain extent, but we only got a response to 1% of the notifications that we issued. Now, in 2025, this increased to 12%. That is very positive, but still there's almost 90% of notifications that get no response. So the stakeholders get that information, but they essentially don't follow up with any, they don't tell us if there has been any kind of mitigation planned or not for those notifications. Now we know that in some cases this is an issue of sharing data and confidentiality, but we see large scope for an increase in response rates and more mitigation cases. As I mentioned, each and every one of these super emitters is a huge opportunity for climate action, often cost-effective, often generating more energy security. So we're hoping to increase this number and see more mitigation of methane emissions soon.
Thank you very much for this very stimulating, again, case study with this idea that not only the collection of information allows to identify where the problems are, but also it allows to target assistance. And this is a very important, I mean, of course, this is a very specific case because this is something, many environmental issues are to be managed at the international level, at the global level. But for water, for instance, this is exactly the same. You have to identify where the problems are, where the leaks are, and to help the local community or the local operator to fix the problems. And I think this is really stimulating. So let me open the floor to the audience, whether it is for a question or for an additional case study coming from the community of regulators. So yes, please, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. Anna Brahey from the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. I've got questions for both presentations actually, but firstly in relation to the methane, I just wanted to understand firstly a little bit more about the nature of those methane releases. Are you looking for operational, are they long-term bad operation? Or are you looking for, you gave the example of the flare that wasn't working. Are you looking for kind of hiccups in operational practices that lead to methane, or are you looking for long-term kind of ongoing methane releases, or both?
Both. And let me detail that a bit further. So we have seen cases of sources that have been emitting for decades. And this can be even malfunctioning flares that have been misoperating for decades, or intentional methane emissions. You can have, in some cases, operators, they don't really have an avenue for the natural gas to reach a market, so they use a stack to vent it to the atmosphere. And that's just intentional emissions that are ongoing. But it depends a bit sector by sector. So if we think about coal mines, for example, most of underground coal mines have ventilation shafts that are used for security purposes, and you can install equipment, regenerative thermal oxidizers, to reduce the methane emissions that are vented from these mines. But in most cases, in most coal mines around the world today, they will simply vent it, and this is an ongoing practice. And what we want to do is help operators identify and regulators identify which are the larger sources of emissions so that they can prioritize those. Similarly for landfills. Landfills often, if they are not controlled, they will have ongoing methane emissions for a long time. In the oil and gas sector, then the picture becomes more nuanced. You have ongoing or non-routine emissions which are intentional, and you have emissions which are non-intentional because of an equipment malfunction. And we will be looking at the distribution of these, but what we've been seeing so far is that from these super emitters that we have been detecting, it's roughly 50-50. 50% are cases, more or less, where these are planned events. Maybe you need to do maintenance on a pipeline, and you don't really have an economic interest to compress that gas and inject it, so you just vent that. Those are intentional emissions and non-routine. In some cases, you don't know about a leak that is ongoing in the pipeline, and then you identify it and you go and fix it. So there's a bit of both.
Thank you. And so that kind of helps me think about the next question, which is, what is the incentive for these businesses to fix the methane? I mean, it can either come in the form of requirements or fines or some sort of emissions, the creation of an emissions certificate. So does it vary country by country, or so you're just providing information to the country to do with as they have in their frameworks?
Yes, that's correct. We don't have any enforcement capacity in a sense, right? We don't fine anyone. We just provide information. And in some countries, they do have regulations in place that essentially say that these super emitters are not permitted. And so either they will fine the operator or they will require the operator to fix the leak within a certain timeline. In the oil and gas sector, there are many cases, especially of these malfunctions and unintentional emissions, where the operator doesn't know about it, and once he knows, he will fix it because then he's saving money, because then that will be gas that he will be selling. But in the case of the flare, for example, it's more of a reputational risk, right? Especially for large companies. Once there's some news saying they have a super emitter, then that's bad for their reputation, so they will fix it even if it comes at some cost. So the picture depends a bit sector by sector. For coal mines and for landfills, often if there's no regulation in place, then action won't happen unless there's some kind of external incentive.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Manuel, I'm from the Portuguese telecommunications regulator. Thank you very much, Manuel, Pedro, for the presentations. A question for Pedro regarding data management, and allow me to frame the question. We are now implementing in Portugal a new subsea cable that will connect the main continent with the two islands. And that will be the first subsea cable that will have external sensors. We are doing that to establish an early warning system for tsunamis. But we have a slight problem, is that they sense everything. So they sense whales, for instance, and other things. So people are a little bit nervous about that. So we are now discussing how we can manage the data so that it is safe to use it, and at the same time, it will still allow to have an early warning system. At the end of the day, we will gain like 6 to 7 seconds of improved warning. But if we have to send the data to the defense minister for them to approve the use of the data, we will lose a couple of seconds. I imagine that you are gathering information from satellites, and I imagine that data will allow to look to many things. Do you face the same problem? Do you have discussions regarding this? Do you have a solution for this? Other thing, which is I find this really funny, because I've been going to conferences on subsea telecommunications and at the same time the use of satellites, and it's really funny because people from subsea cables are really used to discuss how we gather data and we store data. People from satellites, for some reason, you forget that you have an eye over the world and you can see everything. So it's strange for me that you don't have these kinds of problem.
I would like to share some experience in telecommunication sector. In the case of Peru, we have only one satellite, Peruvian satellite, and it's used only for education in remote parts of the country, especially in the borders, in the mountains. But I think it's a good idea to use this kind of solutions to cover, for example, to supervise the situation of the lakes in my country, to promote the conservation. For example, because we have many types of mining operations, but in in many places in my country, this kind of operation are very informal. And they are disappearing the lakes, contaminating. And I think we can use the technology to supervise this kind of process in the country. In sanitation service, we don't use the satellite, but we use drones to supervise some parts of the urban areas, or especially when we have problems with in the rivers, the contamination. But I think in the case of Peru, we need to use more technology, especially over all the country, like a satellite. It's a situation that I have to take note.
We are now used to hear a lot about disturbance on subsea cables. The first one that got to Portugal was on the 19th century, so 1874. And the first act of war on the First World War was to cut that cable. So, and once we are in the NATO original room, I remember to share that with all of you.
Yes.
Hi, good morning to everybody. My name is Alessio Quaranta. I'm the SecGen of the Italian Antitrust Regulation Authority. I don't have a specific question, rather a comment of appreciation on what has been said by Manuel before, because I found the passage of his presentation really interesting, but of course, thank you even to Tomás for his presentation, no matter for that. Because when you talk about the educational activity, about the awareness, especially of younger generations, in order to be teach on not to waste scarce resources. It touched another point indirectly related to resilience, because this is the first, let's say, it's practical application of the so-called proactive resilience, which is a concept not really studied before COVID crisis. Not simply going back to the previous situation, restoring the good condition we had before the crisis, but even to try to go back improving them. And this relation to the let's say training and educational activities is something really important in this field. I want to underline it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi there, Lara Connington from Comreg in Ireland, the telecommunications regulator. Thank you both for those really interesting presentations. I have two hopefully discrete questions for each of the speakers. Firstly, for Manuel, when you mentioned, I think it was the Morio system, that there was WhatsApp notifications based on the chlorination levels in the water. I was just wondering, is that WhatsApp notifications to teams to fix the water, or is it more using WhatsApp as like a public warning system to citizens? Just and maybe we can take that offline if you don't have that off the top of your head. And then for Tomás, just based on Anna's question, from kind of where there are competent authorities who do have the enforcement powers, do you have any relationship with those competent authorities where, as opposed to just giving information to the operators who are the emitters, do you ever follow up if you know that there's a competent authority, or is it just kind of with industry or with operators? Thank you very much.
Your question was about the chlorination service?
Yes, using WhatsApp as a notification system, I think you had, or WhatsApp notifications based on the chlorination levels. Basically, are you using WhatsApp to notify maintenance teams, or are you using WhatsApp to notify the general public? I was just wondering, are you using it as a public warning system through WhatsApp?
Okay. The problem in Peru that we have about 27,000 rural areas. And in this part of in these rural areas, the providers almost don't use the chlorinate. Different reasons, because they think that the chlorine affects the quality of water, different kind of reasons. but sometimes in small cities, the operator is a little bigger operator, don't use the chlorinate in the time that it must use, because the process is manual. They use a manual process. That is the reason that in Sunass, we implemented the Morea as a public system. It's for us to know what is the situation of the chlorine in different operators. They only use the system to know what is the time to chlorinate, but not, for example, they used to know what kind of chlorinate is in the water, or what is the time to chlorinate. The system alert if there is not chlorinate in the water. This is a very small system now, but we want to implement in more parts of the country, because we have 50 big operators in urban areas, 480 in small areas, and 27,000 in rural areas. I don't know if I answered your question about the situation of this kind of...
So essentially your organization will send a WhatsApp alert to the public authority that is perfect. Yeah, that was the question on the WhatsApp. Thank you so much.
And on your second question, we have a tier of priorities. So our first priority is to inform the country-level focal points. So we have engagement with a number of countries. I think the list is around 20 right now, where the government says, this is the competent authority, and these will be the people that will receive the first notification. The second tier are the operators that are within this oil and gas methane partnership, and they will essentially get it right after, or in a very similar time frame. And then in the cases where we do not know a competent authority, we do not know who the operator is, then we will send to the UNEP representative, who will then try to find out who is the right person within the country.
This second session is entitled Strengthening Resilience Through Stress Testing and Scenarios. And basically, stress testing and scenario analysis are increasingly used to assess how sectors respond to shocks and disruption. These methods use the data and digital tools at a regulator's disposal to foresee emerging risk and identifying scenario. This session discusses how regulators use tools to identify vulnerability, test systems, and inform response strategies. Example will illustrate how different sectors apply stress testing and scenario analyzing to strengthen resilience. So the first speaker will be Davide Stroppa. He's senior policy expert and team leader for AI Act implementation in the digital finance unit of the European Banking Authority. He's currently working on digital operational resilience, ICT and emerging risk, as well as leading the work on the implementation of the AI Act in the banking sector. Before joining the EBA, he had worked for a large pan-European bank, first as an economist and then in the finance and risk management department. So, Davide, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks for having me here today. And apologies, I don't have any slide, but I hope that, let's say, what I'm going to say is going to be useful and resonate to all of you. So basically, I will focus mainly on the issue of digital resilience. And this is because over the past decade, digitalization has transformed financial services in an unprecedented speed, and it has also reshaped the risk landscape for the financial system. Digitalization does not only create opportunities, but clearly amplifies operational risk and interconnectedness. And this is why resilience, in particular digital resilience, has become a strategic concern, both for financial institutions and for supervisors. So I would like today to focus on three main directions, three main axes of analysis. The first one is how in the EU the regulation has addressed the resilience challenges posed by cyber risk. The second is how knowledge and data are essential for effective supervision, and actually they are increasing resilience. And then, last, also how supervisory reactivity and time is becoming a key pillar of this resilience. So let me start with the impact of digitalization on operational resilience. I mean, the financial services today rely on ICT services, cloud infrastructure, API, third-party service provider, and these dependencies allow institutions to innovate, to operate faster, but clearly they are exposed also to the risk that one disruption in one component can cascade across the system, so to speak. So the cyber incident can quickly escalate from a simple operational issue into a broader financial stability concern. And this is why in the EU, the EU legislator introduced DORA, which is the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which started applying 1 year ago in January 2015. And the main novelty here is the fact that DORA is not just one, let's say, another regulatory layer, but basically it establishes a comprehensive framework for digital operational resilience at the financial system level, so not just for banks, not just for insurance, not just for asset management, but throughout the financial system, and brings together and harmonizes requirements that until that time were a bit scattered over the different legislation. And it does so through four different type of requirement. The first one, strengthening ICT risk management, which means that financial entities must have proper governance, clear responsibility, and controls to identify and protect against ICT risk. Second is harmonized incident reporting regime, and this is crucial because ICT incidents are inherently different from other type of risks that are monitored usually by financial entities. So they can clearly multiply, propagate across different sectors. They may be very, very quick. They can disrupt functions that are supporting the real economy. The third one is the introduction of digital operational resilience testing. So financial entities need to test their system in order to be sure that they are not just compliant on paper, but they are actually working in the real world. And then the fourth part is third-party risk management, which means that on the one hand, there are a number of simple rules to guide financial entities when they are monitoring their third-party providers. So basically to say, look, you are not just responsible for what you do, but you need also to monitor what your third-party providers are doing, but also introduces an oversight framework for those providers that are considered and that are designated as critical. And these critical third-party providers are overseen by the three European supervisory authorities, EBA, ESMA, which is also here in Paris, and the EIOPA. So in this sense, DORA provides, let's say, a framework to ensure that financial entities are resilient, they can continue operating and they can recover quickly when they are hit. The second dimension is knowledge, and knowledge means data. One example here is clearly identified by the data that we collect on incident, on ICT incident. Financial entities, basically, they have to report ICT incident to their supervisors, okay? And the national authority share the information of this incident with us, the European Supervisory Authority. And why is that important? Because on the one hand, for the supervisor, the timely and high quality data on ICT incident can give critical insight on where are the vulnerabilities. So whether it's just a one-off, whether it is a pattern, whether it is a technical issue, whether it is a matter of governance, or whether it is a malicious intrusion. For us, as ESA, that we receive the data from all the competent authorities, so from all the 27 authorities, it gives us the possibility to somehow connect the dots. So to understand whether there is a pattern, so whether there are incidents that are more common in one sector, whether there are incidents that are, let's say, whether there is at some point the incident with a certain root cause that are increasing, and therefore we can rely back this information to the supervisor and they can take the action. The second aspect here, it's also the fact that, and this is related also to this connection of the dots, cyber threats, cyber incidents are not confined by borders, and this is the, let's say, the novelty that somehow financial entity had to confront, and therefore coordination mechanism following, let's say, the data gathering are also important, and this is why it was established the European Systemic Cyber Risk Coordination Framework, which is an acronym for the EU SCIF, which plays a key role because it's basically, it put together the supervisors of the different financial sector to coordinate action and to coordinate communication in case of a crisis. So the idea is not, of course, to replace existing crisis management structure, but to rather connect them in terms of better coordinated action and coordinated communication. And now this brings me to the third dimension, which is time, which is the supervisory reactivity. Because digitalization implies also that banking, the financial system, is also become a fast-moving environment, which is relevant because, for instance, deposit can become much more volatile. This was, let's say, exemplified by what happened 3 years ago with the Silicon Valley Bank, for instance, in the US. So they can move much faster. So which means also that banks and supervisors need to react much more quickly. So we are talking about for possibly hours rather than days. And therefore, in this situation, it's important that action are coordinated. It's important that information is gathered in a timely manner, that there are regular checks and analysis that are done in a, let's say, very quick and swift manner, because the earlier supervisors are able to identify issue and trigger warnings, they can take action more timely. And this is where subtech tools are becoming increasingly important. The subtech tools are, let's say, supervisory technology tools, so basically tools that provide opportunities for better data management, better analytics, and on the one hand, these allow supervisors to, let's say, allocate more efficiently their resources where it matters most, but also they can detect information and detect warnings much quicker. So this is because subtech tools like advanced data analytics, advanced automation, allow to speed up supervisory process. They allow to process a large volume of data more efficient, to identify patterns, anomalies that may not be visible at first sight. One important thing, however, is that at least in our work, subtech tools, so these automated tools, do not replace the supervisory judgment. They some sort of augment them, augment the supervisory judgment. They complement, because it enables supervisors to focus their expertise where it matters most. For instance, this is something that we have also experienced at the EBA with the tool that we are developing and that we are testing to start monitoring stable coins in real time. And this is particularly relevant because we are talking about activities and actors that are inherently digital, that they are fast moving, and where traditional supervisory approaches may not be sufficient. And tool, for instance, exploit this type of this type of system to detect early warning indicators. On-chain data, on-chain crypto market data can also allow for monitoring of key liquidity metrics, like those that are related to price, and this is available 24/7. Other metrics, other thresholds can be established so to have automatized programs to monitor the evolution of this metric and send automatic alert. So this was an example that we as EBA are using. There are other examples of subtech tools that are related to AML and counterterrorism financing issues, that are related to market manipulation or quality assurance of the reporting. So to conclude with a few key messages related to all these, let's say, three dimensions. The first one is that digitalization has profoundly changed the nature of operational risk for financial entities, and let's say the new framework provided by DORA gives let's say a robust and harmonized safeguard to address these challenges. The second is that knowledge, together with high data quality and effective coordination, is essential, especially when it comes to data on incident, because it's we can gain a lot from them. The third one is that resilience depends also on, let's say, the authorities' possibility to react quickly, and to this extent, subtech tools are becoming an enabler on this sort of proactive and data-driven supervision. So, in the end, operational resilience in the financial system lies on shared responsibility. On the one hand, more resilient financial entities, so they need to be more resilient, they need to develop these capabilities. On the other, authorities need to act more timely, they need to be more data-driven and to rely on high-quality information to react accordingly. So this is, let's say, in a nutshell, how we see the issue of resilience when it comes to the connection with digitalization, with the financial system, which is changing quite fastly. And I stop here, and of course.
Thank you so much. Perfect timing, Davide, and very, very stimulating presentation. That, of course, on the one hand, the financial and banking sector is very specific, but in fact, network industries are also relying exactly, facing exactly the same challenges. The digitalization of transportation system, energy system, whatever systems trigger risk. And I guess Annegret will confirm that in a minute. So let me introduce our second speaker. Of this session, Annegret Groebel works at the Federal Network Agency, the Bundesnetzagentur. Sorry for my very bad German accent, which is the German regulatory office for electricity, gas, telecommunication, post and railways market in Germany. She has been Council of the European Energy Regulators President since January 2019. She was appointed Vice Chair of the International Confederation of Energy Regulators, ICER, in June 2020, which was confirmed for a second term in August 2023. She has experience in advising public authorities on regulatory reform and sector-specific regulation in numerous projects. And she is a very current speaker in most of the NER and Club des Régulateurs meetings. So, Annegret, the floor is yours.
So I will show, I will try to show 2 examples for the use of digital tools and, let's say, resilience of digital systems. One is indeed our preparations ahead of the snap elections for the German Parliament in February 2025 in our role as Digital Service Coordinator, and I'll explain this in a moment. And the other one is a little bit more traditional and relates to what we did in terms of scenario calculations for gas winter scenarios. And this, of course, relates to the previous energy crisis. So we tried to assess the security of supply of gas in order to to avoid having to take measures in the worst case that there is a gas deficit. So just moving ahead to the first one. So what is a digital service coordinator? This is a special role assigned to a number of telecom regulators. And it means that we are responsible for coordinating every player that is in Germany active in the area of the so-called Digital Service Act. We are not regulating the operators and the platforms directly, the online platforms directly, but coordinate all stakeholders. And then there is a special category on which I want to focus, which is supervised directly by the European Commission, but with the support of the national digital service coordinators. And these are the so-called VLOPs and VLOSEs. This means they're very large online platforms and the very large online search engines. And you can imagine who that is. Formally, they are designated if they have equal to or more than 45 million users in the EU. Yeah? And so you can clearly see who that would be and who this addresses. And they have special obligations with regard to systemic risks of their systems and the way their systems work, their digital systems, their algorithms, etc. Therefore, they have to have in place certain mitigation measures. And this is something that we stress test ahead of the election in order to avoid, and you see this here, any negative consequences and impact like manipulation of the process of the election. Yeah? So that's what we do in this context. There are others, but I will focus on this, otherwise we will not get through. Okay, next one. Thank you. So they have to run a yearly so-called risk assessment according to the DSA, the Digital Service Act, as I mentioned. And again, they should identify any actual or foreseeable negative effects on civic disclosure and the electoral process, and as well as public security. So you see already here that their systems, the algorithms, etc., are now entered into a sort of kind of critical or essential infrastructure type infrastructure system. So that is similar to the network systems, to network infrastructures, and that is also, there is a parallelity here, and I'll come back on this later. So then we can go to the next thing. This shows the factors influencing these so-called categories of systemic risks that relate to the design of their recommender systems, the selection and presenting of advertisements, in this context here, of course, of political advertisements. And in particular, they also need to analyze the risks of an intentional manipulation of their service, including by inauthentic use or automated exploitation of the service. In other words, kind of information campaigns, malicious information campaigns, malicious uses of the system. And you can imagine that this is amplified then by the way their algorithms work. And lately, this kind of rapid and wide dissemination of illegal content or information that is incompatible with their with the general terms and conditions is also, of course, speeded up by the use of artificial intelligence, which requires additional assessment and additional measures to avoid that this influences negatively the outcome of an election. Next one. So what do they have to do when they have done their risk assessment? They have, for example, to adapt the design, features, and functioning of their services, including in particular also their online interfaces. They have to adapt the content moderation process that they have in place. It's very important that they test and adapt their algorithmic systems, including the recommender systems, adapt the advising systems, and very important with regard to the election, reinforce their internal processes to detect such risks and test it and document it, so that they can supervise their activities, in particular with regard to the detection of systemic risk, so that this is in place. A little bit of what you said and previously about the way the banks have to, and the financial institutions have to take measures. They also have addressed to the external to take awareness-raising measures, for example, and they also have to look that the information is authentic and is displayed correctly. So these are a bunch of measures, and of course, as I just said, several are important in general, but several are also particularly important with regard to the election process. And I want to point out one thing here, because these systems are very complex. So the way the DSA let's say obliges the online platforms is that they have to assess it and then put in place measures that take into account the particular risks that they have identified, and also that are, let's say, particularly suitable to address their vulnerabilities and the risks that they have identified. You may say that this is kind of self-regulation, but this is a bit more, because the supervisory institutions, in this case the European Commission, can ultimately fine them, sanction them in case they detect an infringement of not having in place adequate measures. And the only way to do the whole thing is exactly to say you have to make sure that your systems are protected against these systemic risks. And there's also the possibility of giving access to researchers, so that they can check that the measures are adequate and suitable. Yeah, because for any regulator, it is impossible to say themselves how to which measures are the most suitable in this case of these digital platforms with the very complex digital systems and algorithms. So that is a specific feature. So what are the typical risks here, and why is this called a systemic risk? The reason is that the term systemic risk generally refers to first to a breakdown of an entire system rather than any part of the system. Yeah? And if this system that breaks down is at a key positioning for other systems that rely on it, other infrastructures, then there is a systemic risk that goes even beyond the sector or the platforms that we are addressing here. So there is kind of a double systemic risk, I have called this. Yeah? And this is something that is very special, I would say, and why it is so important here to make sure that they have mitigation measures in place in order to avoid these type of information campaigns of influencing the electoral, manipulating the outcome of an election. Yeah, so that's here through the dissemination of this information. That is what we try to do here. And you see here, I have also mentioned the thing that is linked to the other infrastructures that we are regulating. And that is very important here to see the interlinkages, which is a typical feature, as was also mentioned previously, of systemic risk. Can go on. Okay, so what are our tasks as a DSC for Germany here? We followed the guidelines and in particular also the so-called DSA elections toolkit for DSCs. And the challenge was that we had very little time because these were snap elections and the previous government broke down on the 6th of November, was dissolved on 27th of December, and the election took place on the 23rd of February. So more or less we had a little less than 3.5 months. We can move on. So to show you here the various measures that we did, first thing was that we established an internal election team right the day after the government broke down. We were connecting and coordinating with all relevant bodies like the Ministry of the Interior, etc. Of course, the Office for the elections, etc. But also other bodies that are involved in the supervision of, for example, content or all the various actors here. And of course, last but not least, the very large online platforms and the very large online search engines. So we did information campaigns to raise awareness of voters, for example, on foreign information manipulation interference, typical disinformation campaigning coming from foreign countries and foreign governments, maybe. And we held a public elections roundtable with the six large VLOs on 24th of January, and then we did the stress testing of whether the mitigation measures that I had described earlier were in place on 31st of January. And in particular, we also made sure that there was in place also in our team an incident response team, because even if you have in place incident reporting mechanism, you must also have a desk that actually takes up the call in case an incident is responded. And again, it is very important that this is done in a very timely manner. So we ensured that there's 24/7 a hotline available and that the task force was reachable around the clock 3 weeks ahead of the election and also during the election. And afterwards, we did an ex post evaluation of the lessons learned. Move on. So how was this stress testing done? We considered various fictitious scenarios with disinformation campaigns, fake accounts, artificial intelligence, interference with deep fakes and the like, also for candidates. And we then asked the very large online platforms to react according to their mitigation measures, report an incident, see whether their systems work. And this was done during the day with little teams, looking at how the very large online platforms reacted and whether their systems were as they should be. And so this was and it was an on-site event only, to avoid any kind of interference also in that moment. And we had Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and X as well as all the other national authorities, civil society, and researchers. So we did this stress testing 3 weeks ahead of the election, or 3 to 4 weeks, and made sure that all the obligatory mitigation measures were in place, and in particular that there was a properly functioning communication among all stakeholders so that we could ensure a swift reaction, and with this increase the resilience of the election process. Yeah? So that was the objective of this, and afterwards we can go to the next slide. There were lessons learned. We have not published, I think, we have published the a brief report in German. There were no major incidents. We identified some flaws during the elections and passed on some of them possible infringements to the EU Commission in order now to investigate whether this was an infringement, and then probably to sanction the very large online platforms. Yes, as I said, important preparedness for the incident reporting, and also afterwards to have a proper documentation of all the measures. That is key. And what we have seen, and this is a recommendation, that it is very time critical, and that sometimes the access to the databases of researchers to which they have a right, which we can as DSC give to them, took too long, so that they could not intervene. And that is something where we say this needs improvement across the board. It's not only a stress testing, but it needs improvement across the board, so to have better interfaces, libraries, and repositories, so that they can target their research better on the possible vulnerabilities, etc. So quickly going through the more traditional testing and scenario building, this was the gas scenario modeling, and you see here we have an exogenous reason. In 2022, when the Russian gas stopped flowing after the invasion of Ukraine and the damage of the Nord Stream pipeline, there was a risk of a gas deficit in Germany. And we as BNetzA would have been are responsible if there is a deficit to allocate the remaining gas to the most important users of gas. Of course, making sure that the end users, the households, are served first, but also critical infrastructure, critical industry, etc. And we had a plan in place how we would do this, but we were lucky not to have to put it in place afterwards or to have to enact it. In order to be prepared and then to be able to react very swiftly, we developed a model that was able to simulate the balance of all entry and exit points of the of the German natural gas system, and we updated it again on the 2nd of November 2023 for the reference period of November 2023 to March 2024. We built in certain assumptions regarding the consumption, the average consumption of the years 2018 to 2021, but we also included the temperature effect of a particular cold year, which was 2012, because this, of course, increases then the consumption, and we wanted to make sure that even under these assumptions there would be enough gas, or at least we would know when there would not be enough gas. Yeah? So Second was that we built in certain assumptions relating to the LNG terminals about the usage, and also later we raised this. So again, to show what mitigation measures can be taken before it really comes to the deficit. We made certain assumptions regarding import-export flows on the interconnection points, that Germany, because Germany is also a transit land for gas, so to other countries, and then the model would forecast the storage levels and the gas balance, and in the worst case, the scenario, a deficit. So we have then, after having filled in these basic assumptions, we run through various scenarios, and you see the A scenarios are always better because we assume in this case there is a reduction of the consumption. In the other case, there is no reduction of the consumption, which means more gas is needed. In scenario 2A and B, we additionally have an increase in export. So again, more gas would be needed. And B, again, consumption level at the same place. And scenario 3, on top of it, there would be a reduction of the imports. Yeah? So all three stress testing then the gas flows and what would be needed in this case and what could be done as mitigation measures. So let's go to the next slide quickly. And you see here the green scenarios, they show that there is enough gas. Storage levels go down, yes, of course, naturally, but it's still manageable. However, we have identified two scenarios where there would be ultimately a deficit. That is scenario 2B and scenario 3B. And in both cases, this would happen then on the 6th of February. You see the storage levels would go down to 2% or 5% in case of 2B, which is the absolute minimum. So you really are then in the red area. You could mitigate it if you assume that there would be a 90% usage of LNG terminals. But again, this is of course an assumption which may be quite heroic. Yeah. So therefore, it's only a kind of showing how, let's say, how critical these situations were, and what we could do to prepare ourselves, and of course also the operators, the storage. And the storage, etc., to ultimately avoid the situation. So we can move to the next slide. We have 2 slides more. So just to say, okay, there was a supply situation has improved ultimately from the last winter, and then the challenges still remain. This could be seen in the scenarios that I explained previously. In particular, if there are low temperatures, higher consumption in Germany, and higher demand in other countries, and thus relating into in less imported gas. Yeah, so that's these are the challenges that we see. And the final slide I want to show, I tried to make a bit of a comparison about the activities to check the risk preparedness and the use of digital systems. I tried to classify a little bit the term systemic risk, and you have seen that in both cases we are speaking indeed of systemic risks. The first one, I called it endogenous, because in this case the digital systems themselves can be used to actively damage, bring actively damage to the society. So it's an additional way here that there is an active element in this, how they design their systems and the algorithm in particular. Yeah? In the other case, it was an exogenous factor, the gas stopped flowing. Yeah? So which regulatory activities did we put in place? In first case, we tried to ensure and support the European Commission in ensuring that the obligatory mitigation measures are in place. We did a stress testing to see that the responsiveness of the big players is there to minimize ultimately the impact on the electoral process, so to protect the the fairness of the elections and to avoid any sort of manipulation from foreign influence, etc. In case of the gas scenarios, we did this forecasting scenario modeling and had also a crisis team in place to manage the process and also, of course, to avoid the worst case. And we had assigned roles to all stakeholders, also in various round tables. And what we see is that it is extremely important on, let's say, how to do the crisis communication. Yeah, the crisis communication in order not to, let's say, to have a self-fulfilling prophecy and maybe even exaggerating the risk, but on the other side, to make clear that they need to be prepared, that it is not an automatic result anymore, that there is enough gas. Yeah? So that's something. The follow-up process, or more long-term measures, if you like, was in the first case, the ex-post evaluation, and I have already also explained what the follow-up in this case is. Yeah? It's more addressed to the large platforms. In the other case, the measures are to mid-term and long-term to reduce the dependency on the fossil gas. Yeah? For example, by using other sources, but in particular using more renewable energy. So to reduce the dependency, be prepared in the storage levels, etc., and generally diversify the sources of the energy supply. Yeah? So that's something that goes beyond the immediate crisis management. Yeah? That's what I want to show here. And also then leads, of course, to having, let's say, to be prepared for the next crisis and have measures in place that make the system the system as a whole more resilient.
Thank you very much, Annegret, for your two presentations. And I will give immediately the floor to Davide, who wants to react.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to react because, let's say, the last slide that you showed about the two types of stress tests somehow resonate with the type of stress test that we usually do also in the financial sector. So you were referring to the gas as exogenous, and the regulatory activities are basically to forecast deficit, and then in terms of follow-up process, it's measured to, let's say, what to do and how to communicate. And in this sense, to me, it resonates very much to our traditional, so to speak, stress test, where basically we apply a macroeconomic scenario to the banking system, or to, let's say, usually the traditional stress test that we run every 2 years is about 64, 65 banks, which represent 75 of the EU total asset. And we apply an exogenous shock. So we simulate a shock. We do, in terms of regulatory or supervisory activity, we also forecast what happens to the balance sheets of the banks. And then, of course, these results, well, are not for us, but are for the supervisor to take action at their supervised entity. And also on our end, very much there is the importance of communicating the result. The other one that you were referring is more, let's say, endogenous somehow, and the regulatory activities are to ensure that mitigation are in place and that there is some lesson learned. And to me, this is something new that, for instance, 2 years ago, the ECB conducted, which was a cyber resilience stress test, where, again, it's based on a simulation, but on a, let's say, scenario that it's happening on basically where the safeguards are bypassed and there is an intrusion in the system. And here, let's say, that as similar here. It's to understand from the banks what are the mitigation that they have in place, what are the process, what is the governance, and of course the follow-up process here is very much to learn lessons from this type. So for me this was very illuminating because despite of different sectors, I saw that basically the type and the structure of the stress testing is very much similar. So I just wanted to make this follow-up because it was very resonating for me.
Thank you very much, David. I think this is exactly the interest of this type of meeting to share knowledge on how regulation is implemented in a given industry, in a given sector, but that might resonate and give ideas for the other sector. It was very clear in the first session. It was also clear in this session. I propose we have another session and we have a coffee break. So I propose to start the coffee break right now. And to resume in this room at 11:35. Okay, let me propose to resume, and so we'll have this third roundtable on building institutional preparedness. Strengthening sector resilience requires not only data analytical tools, but also institutional capacity to act under uncertainty with speed and decisiveness, and in coordination with the other actors. This panel discussion will explore how regulators build organizational preparedness and coordinate with stakeholders to anticipate risk, manage crises, and support resilient service delivery in complex and rapidly changing environment. I should add with shocks. And the first speakers today will be Arnaud Dietrich. So Arnaud is Director of Economics and Financial Affairs for Foresight and Innovation at the French Energy Regulatory Commission, the CRE. In his role, his directorate provides CRE with expertise on all economic and financial matters, while promoting and supporting innovation and foresight initiatives. He began his career in 2008 at PricewaterhouseCoopers as a financial auditor. In 2013, he joined Capgemini as Deputy Director of Consolidation. In 2016, he transitioned to the regulated infrastructure sector by joining the French Transport Regulatory Authority. And so, Arnaud, the floor is yours.
So, good morning, everyone. So, I am delighted to exchange with you today as part of this seminar. And I would like to warmly thank Professor Eric Brousseau for this invitation, as well as the organizers for the high quality of the debates we have already had this morning. Why is this institutional preparedness in the face of the digitalization such a crucial topic? Because data and digital technologies are no longer just an additional tools for the regulators. They are becoming the operational foundation of our work. And like any critical infrastructure, this foundation must be resilient, secure, and adaptable to meet today's challenges, but also those of tomorrow's. It's okay, working. So it's okay. I am Arnaud Dietrich, and as Eric mentioned it, I am Director of Economics Affairs, Foresight and Innovation at the French Energy Regulator Commission, the CRE, with the independent authority responsible for 4 missions. First, regulating electricity and gas networks and infrastructures, then ensuring the proper functioning of electricity and gas markets, managing key support schemes for renewable energies, and informing public debate on major energy issues in France. The CRE is composed of 160 staff members, so it's a small organization, if I can say, with a 24 million annual budget each year. What are we facing? So is how the digitalization is reshaping the energy market. So take this morning a concrete example. By monitoring the wholesale electricity and gas market between 2020 and 2025, the volume of orders and transactions processed by the CRE increased by 25, from 10 million to 250 million per month. What does this explosion mean? For market, it's a greater liquidity, but also higher risk of manipulation or malfunction, which are hard to detect. And for the CRE, it's a radical transformation of our tools, including storage and processing capacities, multiplied by tenfold. For example, daily data volume has increased tenfold since 2022. We have to adapt also our surveillance algorithm to be able to analyze these flows. So it's a major challenge. In 2024, our team processed more than 15 million transactions, so it's plus 30% in 1 year, representing 180 billion of euros of transactions who are analyzed. So behind these figures lies an operational reality. Without mastering data, there cannot be effective regulation. So, for security and resilience, we become the first French regulator certified NIS2. So NIS is a Network on Information Security Directive, and we are since 2025 NIS2 certified at the high level, the most demanding standards. What does this entail? More than 100 measures were taken for a dynamic risk analysis. For example, intrusion detection, redundancy of our servers, etc. We have a daily street monitoring with certified tools, and we only used certified tools by the French ANSSI with the French Authority for IT Security. And above all, we build an internal security culture through a dedicated committee involving all the departments of the CRE. And this is very important to have this shift of the cybersecurity culture. For a small regulator or a small company or organization like our organization, it's a significant investment. It's 18 months of work for the implementation. So we had 1 staff people involved during these 18 months fully for this to build it this NIS2 certification, and it's a major human and technical cost for an organization of our size. But why do we have made this choice? Because we have not the choice not to do it, in fact. And a regulator must lead by the example. If we require that operators secure their infrastructure, we must ourselves be beyond reproach. So, what are my... No, it's okay. Sorry. My key takeaways. So, number of 3. First one, digitalization is an accelerator for market transparency as much as for its complexity. Second one, data is a strategic asset. Its processing and production must be at the core of the regulator's actions. And third one, institutional preparedness is imperative, but it comes at a cost and requires clear choosing. We had to prioritizing our investments. We have to train our teams, and also we have to cooperate, of course, with peers at a different level, at energy regulators level, European-wise, or at regulators for different infrastructure in France. So finally, the conviction is that the regulators cannot simply react to crisis or innovation. We must anticipate. And this embedding digital resilience into our DNA, as we have done with this NIS2 certification, is very important. So thanks for your attention, and happy to discuss with you after the two other speeches.
Thank you very much, Arnaud. And I will immediately give the floor to Alexandre Abdallah Arrojo. He's a water resource specialist at Brazil's National Water and Basic Sanitation Agency, ANA, and currently serves as coordinator of hydrological studies within the Department of Water and Socioeconomic Studies. His work focuses on translating scientific and technical knowledge into decision support tools for public policy, including national hydrological modeling, seasonal stream flow forecasting, flood risk mapping, and water-related economic and environmental accounts in the context of climate change. So, Alexandre, the floor is yours. Okay.
Can you
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, so I will start. Good morning. I am Alexandre Abdallah Araujo, water research specialist at Brazil's National Water and Basic Sanitation Agency, ANA. Today, I present our institutional response to the 2024 Rio Grande do Sul floods, one of the most severe hydrological disasters in our history. The 2024 disaster was a true institutional stress test. We faced rainfall of unprecedented intensity, more than 700 millimeters in 10 days, over a large region. 478 municipalities affected. 2.4 million impacted people. 183 dead and 27 missing. This strategy showed the need to create institutional capacity. For that, ANA created the Technical Advisory Group, named GTARS, not as a temporary task force, but a structured arrangement involving around 15 organizations, including other government agencies, universities, and research centers. Our object was create a bridge to resilience based on a unified technical baseline, transforming data in sustainable and resilient systems to protect society and environment from new disasters. The resilient system is supported by 3 pillars. First, shared diagnostics, represented by a single technical baseline. 2, translating science into decisions. That is, translate models into practical parameters. 3, multi-level coordination, with ANA acting as a neutral technical anchor. In the first pillar, we generate diagnostics. Among many things, we reconstructed the flood using hydrodynamic models, identifying, for example, that water level rose more than 20 meters in one day in the Chaire River, which was responsible for many deaths. In the second pillar, we translated science in policy. Our studies re-evaluated intensity, duration, frequency curves, and maximum stream flow, including 2024 data, showing, for example, that centenary events could now occur every 77 years on average in some regions. Climate change simulations indicate that by 2100, the intensity of events can be 20% higher, and the frequency can be multiplied by 5. Crucially, using the updated ENA parameters became mandatory for projects seeking federal funding. In the third pillar, thanks to multi-level coordination led by ENA, it has been possible to establish communication channels with different sectors of society, sharing relevant information, protocols, and guidelines for building a sustainable and resilient future. In conclusion, ANA is building bridges to resilience through the collaboration of many partners under unified technical basis. The actions of the Technical Advisory Group are bringing synergy with many other ENA actions, are helping with the reconstruction processes, and are keeping permanent institutional capacity. In a nutshell, data enables preparedness. Governance makes it effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. And I will immediately give the floor to Ihor Mitroshisev. He is the head of the unit for monitoring and analysis of the electricity market and the energy market department at the National Energy and Utilities Regulatory Commission in Ukraine. Ihor, the floor is yours.
Is everything okay?
Perfect.
Okay. I would like to briefly share Ukrainian experience with digitalization and crisis management in electricity sector. Let me start a short overview of our information system. It is designed to collect, process, analyze electricity market data and support regulatory decision making. Can you see second slide here?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, some technical issues. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It is short description of our information system divided to the stages of this system. The system integrates multiple data sources, including TSO, market operator, power exchange, guarantee buyer, neighboring TSOs, and NCA. We, on daily basis, process more than 40 standardized data sets. And data is validated, cleaned, and stored, and then transmitted to analytical dashboards and reports. And currently, we manage more than 200 gigabyte data with 35 databases in our system, and provide around 180 dashboards and analytical tools to support both internal and external users. This enables us to monitor the market on a daily basis and react quickly on emerging challenges. Our system is critical to providing management with complete and up-to-date information about the state of energy system and provide analytical insight across all aspects of electricity market. And our system developed in science 2019 when Ukraine introduced a competitive electricity market. On next slide, we show the sources of information. We receive information for our TC, Ukrenergo, market operator, power exchange, guarantee buyer. We have requests for market participants, and we communicate with websites of our neighboring TSOs as well as ENSOE. But now, recent years, we have faced with unpredictable changes due to the war in Ukraine, including infrastructure damages, power outages, and data disruption. Despite this, our system has remained operational and has provided critical for decision making. And let me highlight two particular cases how we have used our information system to make regulatory decisions. The first one is a case with renewable energy. Following market liberalization, the renewable generation grew rapidly. However, we faced increasing curtailment due to the system constraints. On the top of the slide shows monthly volume of curtailment over the past year, and below examples of hourly values of this curtailment. As shown on screen, curtailment volumes were significantly, especially in 2022. But using our data analytics, we identified this issue and initiated regulatory changes. Energy storage systems were introduced as a separate market activity supported by new licensing conditions. And as a result, energy storage deployment increased significantly, and number and hours of maximum restrictions have significantly reduced. And totally, renewable curtailment decreased by more than 50% compared to 2022. And the second case is more interesting as for me. This case relates to emergency situations caused by wartime damage. Since February 2022, unfortunately, Ukraine has been in a state of activity hostilities with Russia, and very often the targets of missile and drone attacks are generation facilities and power grids. Such attacks lead to sudden losses of generation and emergency situation in Ukraine power system. On this slide, we showed the situation where horrific missile and bomb strikes resulted in majority of generation being shut down and emergency situation arose in Ukraine. In the top of the slide, we show the graph of the hourly generation in energy system, and we see two huge attacks in November and December. Then, due to this, it's create large imbalance for majority market participants who cannot fulfill their contractual obligation. On the bottom of this slide, we describe this volume of positive and negative imbalance of market participants. And based on our analysis, we introduced emergency amendment to market rules. And the main idea was to protect market participants from unpredictable losses during emergency situations. The essence of these changes are market operations are temporarily suspended, bilateral contract has halted, and settlement are based on pre-event average day-ahead market prices. This approach helped to protect market participants from severe financial losses, because this situation repeated next years. And these examples demonstrate that digitalization and data-driven systems are essential for both regulatory effectiveness and crisis management in energy sectors. And looking ahead, we see the digitalization as long-term strategic priority. We plan to further expand our system, improve data quality, and introduce new tools that we will support market transparency, resilience, and sustainability, even under these extreme conditions in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
So it's clear that the combination of climate change on the one hand and geopolitical, let's say, geopolitical disorder on the other hand, are huge factors of stress, exogenous stress maybe, but still for our regulated sectors, whether they are, whether it's linked to the cyber risk, or whether this is linked to the infrastructure itself. And it's clear that in that context, we need not only sharing data, but reorganizing governance system to first to anticipate the crisis, and second to deal with those crises when they occur. Thank you for the three speakers for sharing those their experience, and maybe I can open the floor to the room, either to add comments or raise questions to the three speakers, or even since we did not have time in the previous session for a discussion, to also raise questions and comments on what was said in the previous session.
I have a question for Annegret to the previous session under your, let's say, guest responsibility. According to the present situation in the Middle East, are you going to update your procedures as you did after Russian aggression to Ukraine? Because I saw in one of the slides you projected that after 2022 you revised your procedures.
Yes, I should have said this. We still have right now in place a kind of dashboard where we have information on the current prices and current storage filling levels, etc. So the transparency is there. We have not yet considered updating the model and let's say bringing it back in place. Simply because indeed the situation right now is still, I have to say, different from the crisis in 2022, let's say 2023. Of course, prices have increased, but they did not increase as much as was the case in 2022. And we are better prepared in the sense of the measures that are described at the end. We are more diversified, so we have less dependency on only one source, and that helps, I think, let's say, mitigating the general situation. So what we can say right now is the situation is characterized rather by a pricing problem, and there are some discussions, of course, on how to protect consumers, affordability considerations, more by the government. But we don't have a security of supply problem. Yeah? Not in gas and not yet in oil, and not yet, but I'm saying yet, it depends all on the length of the war.
Thank you everyone for a really interesting presentation. My name is Tomás. I work for the Canada Energy Regulator. I have a question for Arnaud. Just regards to the information shared about how you manage cybersecurity processes and how you approach to that in the EU. I'm curious about how you engage with companies in terms of sharing information about incidents and whether there's any level of requirements in terms of how they share that information and how you connect with them. Because I know my experience has been that sometimes, there's that push for some form of confidentiality around what's happening and the impact for companies themselves. So what does I think you called it NIS2, what are the requirements that sort of help address that?
Okay, so the NIS2 is a European directive for security, apply to all the regulators and energy, critical infrastructures operators. So we are not operating infrastructure, but we are regulating the infrastructure. So we have all this data gathered in our servers, and to prevent these cyber issues, we have to be, or we chose to be NIS2 certified. And so we have all the processes in place in France for the French regulator for this. We face every day issues. That's for sure. our systems are attacked every day. So we didn't communicate on it because it's never, I touched some wood, I hope. It's always difficult to speak about this without thinking tomorrow something can happen, but something huge can happen because every day a lot of small things happen, I would say. So we didn't communicate on it, but we have a resilience plan already forecasted. If something big happens, how we can recover first our data and how we can communicate on what is the issue, on what kind of data has leaked or something like this. So we are prepared to do it. So we have built a crisis room, we have built a crisis kit, toolkit if needed. We have our press communications already done if we have to communicate if something big happens. Yes.
Thank you for that. So do the companies, is there any requirement for them to share, like when they have incidents with you as a regulator, or is there any like?
Yes, of course, we have we have a certain scope of items who are shared with the regulator, I will say immediately or just after the event. Some of the less problematic items are just shared by batch on a regular basis. We have not continued or real-time communication on these events, but they are sent by batch. It can happen. It happens to us. It can happen to the operator. So but above a certain level of issue, they communicate immediately with us, and we are on the field with them.
But maybe we can add that in France there is a governmental agency responsible for cyber security, and so which is oversighting all, let's say, IT systems. Of course, the critical ones, but as we know, sometimes the less critical ones are also the door of entry for attacks. So in fact, the agency is oversighting the implementation of regulatory and legal requirements for the protection of any information system, digital system. And I will give you the floor. And typically, this is and coordinate, of course, with both other governmental agencies responsible for other aspects of security, let's say, and with sector regulators and economic regulators that are responsible for the regulation of those industries, the related industries. And in a sense, there may be a division of labor between the regulators, the sectoral regulators that maybe are responsible for the prevention of crisis, in a sense, and the NC and other agencies that are responsible for immediate action when crises occur, and also in the case of NC for the protection of critical digital infrastructure. I saw.
Thank you very much. So I'm Théophile Billard, and I'm working into the French National Cyber Authority. Thank you for telling that incident response is for the French National Authority at the first place, and also that you can call the CSIRT, regional CSIRT, national CSIRT for help if you need in case of a cyber attack. Just to clarify the certification for Mr. Dietrich, can you clarify if it's an homologation so it's not quite NIS2, NIS2 for your organization, or are you preparing a certification for your sector, or you obtain a certification from a different country because there is no certification right now on a legal basis in France? Thank you.
Yes, it was an issue because there is no, it's an European directive, NIS2, but it's not transposed in French law currently. And so we obtain an homologation, NIS2 homologation 1 year ago. And we were assisted by the ANSI. I don't have the exact terms of certification or homologation. Sorry for that. I can have a look, but I know that we obtained this, I will say, certification.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Thanks. I just wanted to return to Annegret to talk a little bit about the communication about, well, it's when you want a behavioural response. And in the case that Annegret talked about, it was in relation to gas and gas supply, and presumably it was then backed up by some sort of response about either load management or triggering certain behavioural responses by different categories of people. And if I think of some like examples in Australia, there's the dam levels and triggering different water restrictions, and they differ by state. But for example, in Sydney, if dams get to a certain level, then you can't put a sprinkler on your garden. If it gets to another certain level, you can't use water outside. At another level, the desalination plant will switch on. So there's very clear, and another completely different example was the COVID vaccinations, and at certain levels of vaccination of the population, then people could do different things, like you could mix, you could go out when the population was 80% vaccinated or whatever it was. It might have been 90%, I can't remember. But the population, the general population understood what the different, so they're looking for 70% water dam levels, or they're looking for 80 or 90% or whatever it is. Your reporting, which you mentioned to me in the break, that was daily, and picked up in the media daily as well. Did the population understand what the trigger or what certain, presumably if gas storage levels got to X%, there was a regulatory response? And did people understand that clearly? And did that influence the way that you communicated?
A very good question. And indeed, as I also mentioned earlier, we have still in place a sort of dashboard with prices, storage levels, etc. And at that time, we also had these information updated daily, plus a sort of a short explanation, because I think just showing wholesale prices spiking is not helpful. So we always try to say, okay, we are here. This is now the situation in line with with a certain level of alert. So there is in the EU a kind of traffic light system that you have an alert, let's say, when certain triggers are met, like that you just mentioned, storage filling, etc. And then it gets yellow, orange, and of course red. And yes, indeed, this is coupled then to escalating saving measures, basically. So to make clear that people should, let's say, not wash, not heat their swimming pool, their private swimming pool. This was a famous example we had because we thought we can say this without getting any negative reactions. It is so natural. Well, we were wrong. Yeah, we got a lot of negative reactions on this. Like in one of the major tabloids, like okay, BNetzA is taking away our swimming pools, things like this. Yeah, the warm water in our swimming pools. So it was kind of absurd that some people, I have to say, still didn't get, let's say, the urgency of the situation. Yeah. At the same time, of course, we also had to be very careful in the communication in order not to create unnecessary, I would say, panic. Yeah, so we wanted people to understand that there is a situation, that the situation is let's say, not urgent, but it is you better save gas. Yeah, and this was in particular addressing households. Then we also, of course, together with the government, had a special communication to other bodies, also local bodies, that resulted, for example, in, let's say, cities not lightening the streets overnight anymore, yeah, except only in a few places. Yeah, again, you have to make clear that this is a temporary measure, but it is a measure that is right now necessary. And you have to communicate and to make clear with the city that they should not, let's say, put out the light everywhere, not in the worst areas. Yeah, so that because then you have the feeling everything is uncertain. Yeah, so you see, you have to balance this a little bit. And of course, we also had special communication, not always public, with the generators and with the grid operators. Yeah, so and this was indeed coordinated by the ministry. So there was during the high crisis time, there was a meeting in the ministry, virtual meeting in the ministry every day. So in the morning, every day at 7 or something very early, in any case, to look at all the figures and to see whether the next trigger was reached, and also what the operators and the generators can do already to avoid that we run into the next, the storage operators, of course, as well, that we run in the next level of alert. Yeah, so that was also kind of stepwise to make sure everything that they could do in terms of let me call it short-term mitigation measures, that they do it. Yeah. I think this was a very good exercise in communication and in cooperation with the industry, because everyone in the industry, of course, understood that it is 5 to 12. Yeah, so that they were quite ready to do everything that in order to avoid such a gas deficit. Yeah, so that was quite obvious. Yeah, so that's. And we had at the very beginning, when we also had no experience, our press officer who coordinated all this hired a professional communication crisis manager. Yeah, so they helped us to moderate our language, because usually when a regulator communicates, it's not always understandable. And this manager told us how to do this in a better way.
Yeah, I think it is clear that in time of crisis, the rule of the game have to change. It's no longer. I mean, the market. It's not the question of letting the market work and smoothing the market operation. It's about coordinating the various stakeholders. It's very true in the financial and bank industry. Typically, the regulators is there to prevent crisis, and when a crisis occurs, both the government and the central bank inject money in the system, etc., etc.
Now, for the banks, let's say, for the banks and in general for the financial system, let's say, the general idea of supervision, and this has become even more prominent during the past years, is to be as much as possible proactive. So let's say supervision in our case is not just reactive when something happens, but it tends to be proactive, meaning that the supervisor needs to understand what may be the possible issues that are coming to a financial institution, and then they have to act. If I may add one thing on the communication, for us, communication in terms of the result of the stress test, for instance, is a particularly sensitive topic because this is a, let's say, market-sensitive information. So, of course, this is done when markets are closed, but nevertheless, it needs to be very factual and, let's say, very carefully crafted because, of course, this may have an impact also on market prices. So this is a, let's say, another angle of communication that, let's say, maybe it was not touched before, but for us it's particularly important.
Arnaud?
I just wanted to complete the purpose of Annegret. In France, we had the same during the gas crisis in 2022. And in France, we had the chance to have also a nuclear crisis, difficulty to produce on nuclear electricity combined together. So during a certain number of weeks, we had also this coordination with the operators, the producers, the grid operators, the states, and the regulator. And we meet every days, also like in Germany, to analyze what were the current standing position of every production systems and what we can do for the day and what we can do for the next days. And one of the big value of the regulator here was to be able to produce the data and to aggregate the data of all the operators. And we were called by the government to come in these discussions to be able to share this dashboard. And still now, I received every day an email with the standing position of all the power plants in France. And this was already gathered and collected by the regulator because of the wholesale market analysis that we have to do, but we were the only ones having these data. And now, at the crisis, when the crisis occurred, we shared these data in this crisis room with the governments and the administrations. And so this was a prerequisite that we had on our side, and it was helping to solve or to go out of the crisis day by day during the crisis in 2022. I just wanted to share this example.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to make one comment on a dimension of the DSA, the Digital Service Act, that was mentioned by Annegret earlier. Annegret was mentioning that due to the fact that in fact, when we are dealing with digital platforms, in fact, many risks are, in a sense, unknown or badly documented, etc. And there is a lack of capability by the regulators to analyze the data. So the Digital Service Act make mandatory for the platforms to provide data to the regulators, but one of the other dimensions that has been implemented in the Act, which seems to me very interesting, is to make it mandatory for the platforms to provide data to the research community, so that in fact the research community can analyze what's going on within those black boxes that the platform are to try to analyze, to figure out what are the risks, etc. Of course, the researcher have to explain what the type of research they will be done, and it has been the research plan has to be endorsed by a regulator. And I think this is one dimension that is important, because it could be a solution, because the problem, it was in the initial comments, the problem with this large amount of data that is now available due to the digitization of everything, is that even the regulators, they have some capabilities, but they have limited capabilities. There is also a problem of shortage of skills. Data analysts are scarce and expensive, and they are all working for the big tech, in a sense. Not all, but there is clearly a problem of access to those to this human capital for the regulatory authorities, and therefore it's interesting to have this idea of sharing the data with the research community. And of course, there are issues of privacy, secret of business secret, etc. with those data. But typically, this is one of the things we can do nowadays with AI, is to produce, in fact, synthetic data sets to allow the research community to analyze the issues and then provide publish the result, which are then in the hands of the public authorities, regulatory authorities, etc., to make decisions, and of course of the legislator as well. Of course, this is not to substitute, but this is a complement, and I think this is an interesting dimension that has been implemented in the Digital Service Act, that could be replicated in other contexts. Are there any comments of the speakers before I give the floor to for the final and concluding comments? No? Okay. So let me give the floor to France Pégeot, who is the chair of the Network of Economic Regulators, for the closing remarks.
It's always a challenge to close those seminars. It has become a trademark for me. I guess the OECD asked me that, and it's always my pleasure. But first of all, let me thank all the speakers that really have generously shared with us their experience, and I would say candidly shared with us their experience, where they've highlighted, of course, their successes, but also some of their challenges, and some of what they can anticipate to in terms of the future. But and it's we really appreciated that. And I just want to, usually we do this at the end, but I like to do this at the start. But it's also to really thank Eric Brousseau and Dauphine Université for their very, not only warm welcome today, but also for their continuous support and collaboration with the NER at the OECD. That's very much appreciated. We've had some seminars, we will have more. And I actually think that the issue of data digitalization, and we talked a bit about AI, but without talking too much about it today, I'm sure it's going to come up, is a topic that deserves actually a continuous interest over a few sessions. One of the topics we have explored at NER over the last few years is the changing role of the regulator. And we've talked about it from a regulator being a communicator, the being way more maybe closer to policy than the technical expert that it used to be. And I think what has highlighted today is certainly part of the changing role of the regulator, which is to be a data collector, a data analyst, a communicator of data. And this, of course, brings a lot of, we have heard that, brings a lot of, I would say, benefits to the regulator, benefits to, of course, the party in some cases that it regulates, but generally to society. But it comes with challenges, it comes with costs, and I think that we will all have, as regulators, these challenges. So being able to exchange lessons learned, being able to exchange experiences in a candid fashion like we did today, I would say is really important. And that's where I think that with Dauphine and with the NER, this is an added value I think that we can have. And we will for sure continue to have that. So I just want to stress a couple of things, right? So many of you have stressed and have stated that lots of benefits. I was interested too that some of the benefits come from the data themselves, but also the capacity, and I'm sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat, so but also the capacity of institutions to analyze and to do something with the data and to basically to derive some insights from the data that can be helpful. One thing that I found interesting too is the importance of sharing those data and those analyses, because the transparency itself brings benefits in the sense that it empowers sometimes some regulators to take actions. We've seen this with the Methane organization and with Sunass in Peru, but it also increases just by feeling checked, I would say, the regulated parties increase their compliance. And of course, it empowers, just to go back to that theme, like citizens sometimes to take action. So the transparency aspect that this can bring is, I think, very important and brings a lot of benefits and probably deserves a little bit more research around that, or at least experience shared about that. What I found too is it really requires from the regulators like dedication and focus, right? To really take this seriously, to establish the capacity. And it took 18 months in one of the presenters, I will have to remember, but to set in place the system in order to be able to do that. So I find that sometimes we underestimate, or people outside ourselves underestimate the time it takes to be able to do this properly and to protect the data, to protect privacy. And I think that this is something that needs to be understood better. As an anecdote, I had the Kenyan Transportation Agency. We have huge amount of complaints from air passenger because we handle air passenger complaints. So and sometimes people will say, well, have you thought about AI? Well, of course we have thought about AI, yes. But it's not a magical solution. Et en français, c'est pas en criant ciseaux qu'on va régler les problèmes avec AI. Alors, so there's still, I find, a misunderstanding about how fast and we can do this, and we can do this properly. And this is true for people around the table, right? A key theme for NER that I want to relate to the discussion this morning is resilience, right? A lot of what we have been doing and continue to do at the NER is how, as regulators, we can contribute to the resilience of the sectors, either through the investments we ask them to do, either through, some of the various services in some cases, not only oversights, but that we can offer. So I think that there is clearly the ability to have data, to digitalize some of our operations, and to get some insights from that, contributes to the resilience. But one of you made a very interesting, and I thought insightful comments that actually the resilience and the capacity itself of the regulator to digitalize and use data contributes to the resilience of the sector. So the regulator itself has a role to play just by increasing its capacity and by the way it operates and by the way it delivers its mandate, contributes to the resilience. Given the interest we've had at the NER, I thought that was a really interesting point. So just, sorry to conclude, but you know, this is clearly an area of interest for the NER that will continue. I'm the outgoing chair. Annegret here is the incoming chair, so I'm sure that she will take the baton and continue it, and really continuing the discussions of regulators about how we can use data, digitalization, how we can be more effective at what we do, and again, you know, contribute to resilience of the sectors. And I think the discussions we've had today, and again, thanks to Dauphine and Eric, but also the discussions we have with NER will contribute. I really think that the sharing of experiences and a candid, I would say, sharing of experiences helps us all. So this is, you know, I just wanted to end on that, but to really, I can see in the future more and more discussions. I'm happy that we have a program that is planned, so therefore it brings a certain continuity, but it's certainly something that is going to be transformative for the sectors we regulate, but also transformative for us as regulators as well. So, merci beaucoup à tout le monde, merci aux présenteurs, merci beaucoup à Eric et à l'Université Dauphine.
Well, thank you very much. I should only add that I would like to also thank everybody, presenters today, etc., the speakers and the participants in the room. But I would like also to thank the OECD team that was very active in organizing this session, especially Yola and Vincent. Maybe I'm forgetting anybody, but or somebody, but yes, I do. I am Maria. Okay, sorry, Valeria also sorry, and Baptiste from the chair, and the team is working, so we'll continue, and we'll have a next webinar in June, on the 17th of June, and the synthesis of the conference this morning will be shared with all of you soon. So thank you so much. And now let me invite everybody to a buffet lunch in the same room there where we had the coffee break. So and again, I think it's better than the university cafeteria.